I had a barber competition and I felt the same way. There's no such thing as a winner and loser. I just want everybody to do their best. So.
Hey, how's it going, Shedeur?
What's up? You good?
This is Jacob.
How you doing, my man?
You able to pop on the hat a little bit? Yeah, perfect.
So, Jacob, we got Shedeur Sanders, second-year player for the Cleveland Browns, QB, holding things down, doing what he does. How you doing today, Shedeur?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm doing very good. Even better that I get to see him today.
That's one.
You've probably seen the clip by now. A kid named Jacob sitting at a broadcast desk during Cleveland Browns training camp, and suddenly Shedeur Sanders walks in. 2 minutes. That's all it takes. No elaborate setup, no highlight reel production, just a quarterback putting on a headset and actually talking to a fan like they matter. The wild part? This 2-minute moment is spreading faster than most of his actual football plays. Think about that for a second. In a league where every throw gets graded, every decision gets analyzed, every stat gets obsessed over, it's this unscripted conversation that's got people talking. Not because it's dramatic or controversial. Not because something crazy happened. But because it shows you who Shedeur Sanders actually is when the cameras are rolling and nobody wrote a script. By the time you finish watching this, you're going to understand why this moment matters way more than people realize, and why it's already changing how people think about him heading into the season. This isn't just about being nice to a fan. It's about revealing something deeper about how he thinks, how he competes, and what he's actually chasing in the NFL. Training camp broadcasts are basically the background noise of NFL season. You know the format. Reporters filling airtime between plays, players walking through for a quick sound bite they've probably said 100 times before, the usual manufactured content that most people scroll past without thinking twice. It's filler designed to keep the 24-hour news cycle fed while teams are actually trying to evaluate their rosters. The segment that aired on ESPN Cleveland looked like it was heading in that exact direction. Standard setup, standard guests, standard everything. But then something happened that broke the mold in a way that's still surprising people days later. Jacob was sitting at the broadcast desk. He'd been invited to the training camp, told by the hosts that they had a surprise for him, but he had no idea what was coming. The hosts were building tension in that way that media does when they're setting up something they know will land. Jacob seemed genuinely uncertain about what to expect, caught in that moment where anticipation is building, but you still don't know which direction it's going. Then the door opens and Shedeur Sanders walks in. Not rushed, not like he's got somewhere else to be, not with an entourage or handlers steering the interaction. Just a quarterback walking into a live broadcast tent in the middle of training camp and sitting down. The reaction from the hosts tells you everything about what just happened. One of them literally turns mid-sentence to Jacob and basically resets the entire conversation, telling him that whatever neutral stance he had on the Browns' quarterback competition, it probably wasn't going to survive the next few minutes. There's genuine surprise in their voices. This isn't a choreographed moment that was perfectly timed and planned out weeks in advance. This is something that caught even the hosts off guard, which in a media environment where everything is usually controlled and scripted, that's unusual. But here's the detail that matters most, and it's the one people keep replaying. Shedeur puts the headset on without hesitation. No handler steering him toward the exit after 30 seconds. No glancing at his watch or showing any sign that he's got somewhere more important to be. He settles into the conversation like it's the most natural thing in the world. He looks at Jacob, says, "What's up?" asks how he's doing, and just becomes part of the moment instead of observing it from a distance. That ease is the part that resonates with people watching it back. Because you can't fake that energy on a live microphone in front of a kid who's clearly excited to meet you. Either you care about being there, or you don't. And everyone watching can feel the difference immediately. What's interesting is that this is the opposite of how these interactions usually play out. Typically, when a player makes an appearance at a broadcast desk, it's a transactional moment. Quick hello, maybe a photo opportunity, then they're gone. You get a wave and a smile, and that's the whole exchange. But that's not what happened here. This became an actual back and forth conversation. Shedeur asked questions. He listened to what Jacob was saying. He responded in ways that showed he was actually thinking about what the kid was saying instead of just waiting for his turn to talk or for the segment to end. That detail is subtle, but it's the foundation for everything that makes this moment different from the hundreds of other similar interactions that happen every single week across the NFL. And the timing of when this happened makes it even more significant than it might seem on the surface. Shedeur isn't in some random position where he's got nothing but time to be generous with fans. He's in the middle of one of the most talked about quarterback competitions in the entire league. Every single rep he takes at training camp is being dissected. Every practice throw is being analyzed. Every interview is being picked apart by national media outlets trying to figure out who's going to win the job. That's the environment he's operating in. That's the pressure that's surrounding him every single day at camp. Coaches are grading him. Teammates are watching him. Media is tracking every decision. And in the middle of all of that noise and scrutiny, he takes a break from that pressure cooker to sit with a kid at a broadcast desk and actually be present. The reason that matters so much is because it wasn't a media obligation. Nobody told him he had to do this. Nobody scheduled it into his day as part of his media responsibilities. This was a choice. This was a guy who was already stressed, already under intense scrutiny, already dealing with the mental weight of a career-defining competition, and he chose to use 2 minutes of his time to make someone else's day better. That decision, more than any stat line or any highlight reel moment, is what's got people talking this week. Because that's the kind of choice that tells you something about who someone actually is when nobody's grading the performance. Before Shedeur walked into that tent, there was a setup happening that most people don't fully appreciate when they watch the final clip. The hosts knew something was coming. They'd arranged something. They were deliberately building anticipation with Jacob, telling him they had a surprise, creating this moment of uncertainty where he knew something was about to happen but had no idea what it was. That kind of setup creates a certain energy in the room. There's tension. There's anticipation. Everyone's waiting to see how Jacob reacts to whatever's about to be revealed. Jacob had been sitting at that desk, talking about his perspective on the quarterback competition. He'd explained that he was staying neutral, that he wanted everyone involved in the competition to just go out and have fun, that he didn't see it as winners and losers, but rather as a chance for guys to do their best. It's actually a pretty mature outlook for a young fan to have on live television. A lot of people would get caught up in the competitive nature of it, the drama, the storylines about who's going to win and who's going to lose. But Jacob had already evolved past that. He was thinking about it on a different level. The hosts were clearly pleased with that answer. They'd gotten exactly the kind of response they were looking for, the kind of setup that would make the surprise even more impactful. And then they hit him with it. Shedeur Sanders, walking in, and the way he enters changes the entire tone of the broadcast. There's no fanfare. There's no announcement with music or dramatic build-up. He just comes in naturally, like he's part of the staff or he's been there the whole time. That casualness is actually what makes it more shocking. If the moment had been overproduced, if it had been hyped up and treated like this massive event, it would feel manufactured. But because it happens organically, because Shedeur just walks in and settles into the moment, it lands differently. The reaction from the hosts is immediate and genuine. You can see them realizing that this is about to be something special. They're not just going through the motions anymore. This isn't another standard training camp segment that they'll do 5 more times that week. Something shifted the second Shedeur walked in. One of the hosts actually turns to Jacob and basically tells him that whatever he was thinking before, he should probably rethink it now. That's the moment where you realize that the hosts understand something about what's about to happen. They understand that having Shedeur there, having him actually engage with Jacob, is going to be meaningful. What's remarkable is how Shedeur handles the moment from the second he arrives. He doesn't treat this like a chore. He doesn't put on a public persona or activate some version of himself that he uses for media appearances. He walks in and he's just himself. There's no adjustment, no shifting into a different mode. He puts the headset on, and immediately there's a natural ease between him and Jacob. They've never met before. Jacob didn't expect him to be there. But the way Shedeur approaches the interaction, you'd think they'd been talking for years. He asks Jacob how he's doing. Not in a perfunctory way, but like he actually wants to know. And that's the kind of detail that matters more than people realize. Because in that moment, Jacob stops being a random fan and starts being a person that Shedeur is genuinely interested in. The conversation that's about to happen between them isn't going to be transactional. It's not going to be Shedeur saying thanks for the support and moving on. It's going to be actual dialogue. It's going to be two people having a real conversation about something that matters. The broadcast hosts are watching this unfold, and they're realizing they're witnessing something that's going to resonate with people. They understand that this moment has the potential to spread beyond the normal bounds of a training camp segment. This is the kind of interaction that people will want to share. This is the kind of moment that will prompt discussions about character and authenticity and what it actually means to be a good person in a high-pressure environment. What's interesting is that Shedeur never mentions the fact that he's in the middle of a massive quarterback competition. He never brings up the pressure he's under. He never frames this moment as him taking a break from the stress of his situation. He just shows up and makes time for Jacob. He treats it like this is exactly where he's supposed to be, doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. There's no sense of obligation. There's no sense of rushing. He's fully present. And that presence is what changes the entire dynamic of the interaction. To really understand why this moment matters as much as it does, you have to zoom out and look at the actual environment Shedeur is operating in right now. This isn't just any quarterback at any point in the season. This is a guy in the middle of what's being called the truest quarterback competition in the entire NFL. The kind of competition that doesn't happen very often in the modern league because most teams know who their guy is, or they think they do, or they're not willing to admit uncertainty in public. But Cleveland is different right now. Todd Monken came in as the new head coach after Kevin Stefanski was replaced, and one of his first decisions was to commit to a legitimate extended evaluation window for the quarterback position. That's not something you do lightly. That's not something you announce unless you're serious about actually figuring out who your best option is at the most important position on the field. General Manager Andrew Berry has been equally firm that this is real. This isn't a competition that's being manufactured for headlines or to generate interest or to give everyone a false sense that the decision is still in play. This is an actual evaluation process where the team is trying to determine who's going to lead them forward. What that means in practice is that every single thing Shedeur does at training camp is being scrutinized. Every rep he takes, every throw he makes, every decision he makes with the football, every moment where he's communicating with his teammates or showing leadership. It's all being graded. It's all being analyzed. It's all being discussed in meetings and in film sessions and in conversations between coaches and front office personnel. The pressure is constant. It's relentless. It's the kind of pressure that can consume a person if they let it. And it's not just the internal evaluation. The media is all over this. National media outlets have opinions on who should win the competition. Local Cleveland media is tracking every single rep like it's a presidential election. Analysts are breaking down video footage and making declarations about who they think is better. Bernie Kosar, who played the position for Cleveland in a legendary way, has already publicly said he'd be shocked if Shedeur doesn't win the job. That's not just an opinion. That's a former Browns icon putting his credibility on the line and endorsing what Shedeur is doing. Coach Mike Bajakian, the offensive coordinator now promoted, has publicly said he's been blown away by Shedeur's vision and his ability to see the field. These aren't throwaway comments. These are significant statements that add to the expectations and the scrutiny. Then you've got media like Mary Kay Cabot from the Cleveland Plain Dealer, one of the most respected NFL reporters in the country, literally tracking every single practice rep like it's a playoff game. She's documenting who's getting what opportunities, who's performing well, who's struggling. That information gets published and discussed and analyzed across the entire sports landscape. Jason Lloyd has been critical of aspects of the competition and the way it's being handled, offering analysis that questions whether this is the right approach. These are professional journalists doing their job, but the cumulative effect is that Shedeur's every move is being examined by experts who have platforms and audiences. The weight of that is significant. Most people have never experienced that level of scrutiny. Most people have never had to perform at the highest level while knowing that every single thing they do is being documented and analyzed and debated on television and radio and across social media. The mental load of that is enormous. It's the kind of thing that can wear on you if you're not careful. It's the kind of pressure that can make you tight, make you second-guess yourself, make you hyper-aware of everything you're doing. And yet, in the middle of all of that noise, in the middle of all of that pressure, in the middle of one of the most intense competitive environments in professional football, Shedeur makes the choice to step away from it for a moment and spend time with Jacob. He's not doing this because he has to. He's not doing this because it's part of some media strategy or some public relations plan. He's doing this because he sees a kid who's excited to meet him, and he decides that 2 minutes of his time is worth making that kid's day. That choice reveals something about how he's handling the pressure. It reveals that he's not so consumed by the competition that he's lost perspective on what actually matters. It reveals that despite everything that's happening around him, despite all the expectations and the scrutiny and the analysis, he's still capable of being present for someone else. That's not something every person can do. That's not something every person in that position would think to do. But Shedeur does. And that's why this moment, this unscripted 2-minute conversation, is spreading faster than his actual game tape. Once Shedeur settles into the conversation with Jacob, once they get past the initial greetings and the acknowledgement of meeting each other, the conversation takes a turn that's genuinely revealing. The hosts ask Jacob about his mindset going into the week, and Jacob explains his philosophy about the quarterback competition. He says he wants everyone involved to have fun. He doesn't want to think about it in terms of winners and losers. He just wants to see guys do their best. It's the kind of answer that sounds simple, but it actually requires a certain level of maturity and perspective to express on live television in front of people you don't know. A lot of people would get caught up in the competitive drama. They'd want to pick a side. They'd want to declare who they think should win and defend that position. But Jacob had already moved past that. He'd adopted a mindset that's focused on excellence and effort rather than victory and defeat. He'd separated the outcome from the process. And the way the hosts ask the question, it's clear they're interested in seeing if Shedeur will engage with that philosophy or if he'll give some generic athlete response about competition and fighting for the job. What Shedeur does is different. He doesn't brush past Jacob's point. He doesn't give a canned answer about how competition is what drives him or how he's just focused on winning the job. Instead, he genuinely engages with what Jacob is saying. He tells Jacob that he likes that mentality, not in a patronizing way, not like he's complimenting a kid's participation trophy answer, but like he actually respects what Jacob is saying and agrees with it on some level. And then he does something that catches people off guard. He pulls from his own life to relate to Jacob's philosophy. He tells Jacob about a barber competition he was involved in. He explains that in that situation, he felt the exact same way. He didn't see it as winners and losers. He just wanted everybody to do their best. It's a small comparison, almost throwaway if you're not paying attention, but it's significant because it shows how Shedeur processes competition in general. This isn't just him telling Jacob what he wants to hear. This is him drawing from an actual memory, an actual experience, to illustrate that he genuinely understands the philosophy Jacob is expressing. What's crucial about that moment is that he's not performing humility for the cameras. He's not calculating how this will look if it gets shared online. He's pulling from an authentic memory because it's relevant to the conversation he's having with Jacob. The barber competition detail is so specific, so random, that it has to be real. You couldn't write that if you were trying to craft a perfect media moment. It's the kind of specific personal detail that only comes out when someone is actually being genuine. But then Shedeur takes the conversation even deeper. He moves beyond just agreeing with Jacob's philosophy and starts explaining the reasoning behind why he thinks that way. He talks about appreciating life on a different level. He talks about not getting consumed by small battles because, in the grand scheme of things, they don't mean as much as we think they do while we're in them. That's not the kind of line that an athlete says when they're rushing through a media obligation to get back to the field. That's someone who's actually sitting in the conversation, actually thinking about what they're saying, actually using this moment to express something real about how they see the world. The depth of that perspective is striking, because Shedeur is a young guy in an incredibly high-pressure situation. He's dealing with a massive quarterback competition. He's dealing with national media scrutiny. He's dealing with expectations that come from being drafted by an NFL team. And yet he's still capable of stepping back and acknowledging that in the bigger picture, in the grand scheme of how life actually works, the small battles don't define everything. That's wisdom. That's perspective. That's the kind of thing that usually takes people years to develop, and Shedeur is expressing it like it's something he's already internalized. The conversation doesn't feel rehearsed. It doesn't feel like he's reciting something he's been told to say in media training, or that he's expressing an opinion he thinks will play well with his audience. It feels like Shedeur genuinely believes what he's saying. He genuinely thinks about competition this way. He genuinely sees the value in what Jacob is expressing, and he's using this moment to affirm that perspective and maybe even reinforce it for himself. That's the moment where this stops being a nice gesture to a fan and starts being a genuine character moment. Because character isn't just about how you act when cameras are watching. Character is about how you think, how you process information, how you maintain perspective when you're under pressure. And Shedeur's willingness to have this philosophical conversation with Jacob, his ability to draw from his own experience, his capacity to express genuine perspective instead of canned athlete speak, that's all character. That's all revealing something real about who he is underneath the uniform and the pressure, and the expectations. The conversation shifts toward football next, and the hosts bring up what's coming. Saturday, real football, actual games instead of training camp reps. The hosts ask Shedeur if it's hit him yet, if he's feeling that sense of real competition approaching, if he's locked in on the fact that game action is finally close. It's the kind of question that usually gets a pretty standard response from players. Yeah, they're excited. Yeah, they can't wait. Yeah, the energy's different when the games start counting. But Shedeur's answer is different. He says that every single day already feels like that to him, not because he's manufacturing hype or because he's trying to sound impressive, but because the tunnel vision focus he brings to every single rep in training camp already mirrors what game day is going to feel like. He's not waiting for Saturday to flip a switch. He's not planning to suddenly lock in when the games become official. He's saying he's been building that exact feeling, that exact intensity, that exact focus every single day he's been out there getting reps. What that means is that he's not allowing himself to coast through training camp. He's not separating practice from competition. He's treating every single rep like it matters, every single decision like it's being evaluated, every single throw like it's in a real game. That's a level of discipline and focus that not every player brings to training camp. A lot of guys save their intensity for when it matters, but Shedeur's approach is different. For him, it all matters. Every rep is game speed. Every moment is competitive. That's the mentality he's adopted. And then he says something that reveals what he's actually chasing this season. He tells the hosts that he's excited to see how that feeling, that tunnel vision focus, translates to actual games. Not because he's wondering if he can do it, but because he knows he'll be more comfortable than he's ever been. That word choice matters. Not more talented, not more hyped, not more prepared, more comfortable. Comfortability. That's the thing he's focusing on. That's the thing he's prioritizing. That's the metric he's using to measure his own readiness. When you hear that word choice, you have to understand what he's actually saying. Comfort in the NFL for a quarterback is huge. It's the difference between seeing the field clearly and seeing ghosts. It's the difference between going through your progressions and scrambling. It's the difference between trusting your instincts and second-guessing yourself. Comfort is what separates guys who have a grasp on the offense from guys who are still processing too much information at once. Comfort is what allows a quarterback to play fast and play decisively. And the fact that Shedeur is focusing on that instead of on his arm talent or his athleticism or his physical abilities, that tells you something about how he's thinking about the game. He understands that comfortability is the thing that's going to make him better. He understands that if he can get comfortable with the system, with his receivers, with the reads, with the pressure packages, with how the game moves at the NFL speed, then everything else flows from that. But here's where that word choice becomes even more significant. If you know anything about Shedeur's rookie year, if you understand his path to becoming the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, then the word comfortability hits different. He didn't get a clean runway into the league. He wasn't drafted high. He wasn't coronated as the future. He came in as a fifth-round pick and had to sit and watch. He had to learn. He had to wait for his opportunity. Dillon Gabriel got the early reps. Dillon Gabriel got the chance to establish himself. Shedeur was on the sideline, learning the system, understanding the game, but not getting the repetitions he needed to truly develop. And then, in Week 11 against the Ravens, Dillon Gabriel suffered a concussion and had to come out of the game. That was Shedeur's moment. That was his shot. And when he got in, he didn't give up the job. He went out there and proved he could play. He proved he could compete. He proved he belonged in the NFL. And as the season went on, as he got more reps, as he became more comfortable with everything around him, he got better. By Week 14 against Tennessee, he put on a show. Over 360 yards passing, 4 total touchdowns. He was operating at a high level because by that point, he was comfortable. By that point, he'd had enough reps to know where his receivers were going to be, to trust his instincts, to play fast and decisively. So when he's talking about chasing comfortability heading into this season, when he's saying that's what he's most excited about, he's speaking from experience. He's not guessing, he's not hoping. He knows from living through it that once you reach that point of comfort, that's when you start playing your best football. That's when everything clicks. That's when you stop thinking and start playing. And that's what he's building toward this season. The fact that he's focused on that he's identified that as the key thing he's chasing, that shows a level of self-awareness and understanding that's pretty mature for a second-year player. Most guys would be talking about winning the starting job or proving something to the organization. But Shedeur is talking about the actual process of becoming comfortable, which is a much deeper understanding of what it takes to actually perform at a high level consistently. To really understand why that focus on comfortability matters, why that word choice is so significant, you have to go back and look at Shedeur's actual journey to becoming the starter. Because his path to the NFL wasn't the typical one. He didn't come in as a high draft pick with expectations and opportunity. He came in having to earn everything. The fifth-round pick designation tells you something. It tells you that teams had questions about him. Maybe it was about the competition he'd played against. Maybe it was about how he fit into certain systems. Maybe it was about questions regarding his arm talent or his accuracy or something else that made scouts hesitant to take him earlier. Whatever the reason, he wasn't a priority coming into the league. He was a pick that a team made later in the draft, hoping he'd develop into something useful, but without any guarantees. And when he got to Cleveland, he wasn't immediately given the keys to the offense. Dillon Gabriel was the guy that the organization was investing in at the time. Gabriel had been drafted higher. Gabriel had more of the team's confidence heading into the season, so Shedeur had to sit and watch. He had to be a backup. He had to learn the system from the sideline without the benefit of getting the reps he needed to actually develop. That's a difficult position to be in as a young quarterback. You're watching someone else run your offense. You're seeing things happen that you think you could do better or differently, but you don't have the opportunity to prove it. You're stuck learning, studying, getting ready for a moment that might not come. And there's no guarantee that when you do get your shot, you're going to be ready. You might have all the knowledge in your head, but if you haven't had the reps, if you haven't had the live looks at NFL speed, you might still struggle. But then Week 11 happened. The Browns were playing the Ravens. It was a crucial moment in the season, and Dillon Gabriel went down with a concussion. Suddenly, Shedeur got his opportunity. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. This was when he could prove that he belonged, that he could play at this level, that the questions that caused him to fall to the fifth round were wrong. And he didn't waste it. He got into the game and he competed. He showed competence. He showed that he could read defenses. He showed that he could make throws when they needed to be made. He showed that he was ready, even if he hadn't gotten a ton of reps to prepare for it. Once he got the job, he didn't give it back. That's the thing that matters. He wasn't a placeholder until Dillon Gabriel was healthy again. He was the guy from that point forward. But here's where his approach becomes really interesting. Even though he won the job and held on to it for the rest of the season, he didn't immediately play at an elite level across the board. There were moments where you could see the learning curve. There were moments where things looked choppy. But as the weeks went on, as he got more reps, as he became more familiar with the receivers and the systems and the way things operated, he got noticeably better. By week 14, when the Browns played the Titans, Shedeur was operating at a different level. He threw for over 360 yards. He accounted for 4 total touchdowns. He was accurate. He was decisive. He was playing fast. The difference between him in week 11 and him in week 14 was comfortability. He'd spent weeks getting the reps he needed. He'd had time to become familiar with everything. He'd crossed from just knowing the system to actually internalizing it. That experience, living through that progression, going from sitting on the sideline to getting thrust into games to finally reaching a point where he was comfortable and playing at a high level, that shapes how he thinks about this season. He knows from actual lived experience what it takes to get comfortable. He knows how long it takes. He knows what it feels like to get there. And he knows that once you reach that point, everything changes. So when he's saying that what he's most excited about for this upcoming season is comfortability, when he's identifying that as the key thing he's chasing, he's not guessing or theorizing. He's drawing from real experience. He knows that if he can reach that level of comfort with the offense early, if he can get to that point faster than he did last season, then he's going to play better. And he knows that playing better is what's going to help him maintain his position and take the next step in his development as a player. That's wisdom that can only come from having been through it. A rookie coming in without any experience would be talking about something completely different. They'd be talking about proving something or making an impression or getting better. But Shedeur has lived through the process. He's experienced what it feels like to not be comfortable and what it feels like to become comfortable. So he knows exactly what he needs to chase. And that clarity, that understanding, is a huge advantage heading into this season. He's not going into things blind. He's going in knowing what matters and what to focus on. Here's something that becomes really apparent when you step back and look at the bigger picture of Shedeur's situation right now. The kid has built one of the most unusual profiles for a rookie in NFL history. And I mean that literally, not metaphorically, not as hyperbole. Actually, measurably unusual. Before he'd even completed his first full season, Shedeur set the all-time NFLPA rookie group licensing record. That's money made from his name, his image, his likeness. And the number is staggering. He more than doubled what Patrick Mahomes did as a rookie. Think about that for a second. Patrick Mahomes is one of the most popular players in the entire NFL right now. He's a superstar. He's got a massive platform. He's got endorsement deals with major brands. And as a rookie, he made less in licensing deals than Shedeur has made. Shedeur blew past that number. He more than doubled it. And it's not just Mahomes that he surpassed. Tom Brady's rookie year licensing numbers, which had held up for 20 years, Shedeur crushed those too. He didn't just beat them. He put them in the rear view mirror. Tom Brady, the guy who's arguably the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. And Shedeur's off-field appeal as a rookie was generating more money than Brady's did. On top of that, he's been the top-selling jersey in the entire NFL, not just among rookies, not just among quarterbacks, in the entire league. More people are buying his jersey than anyone else's. That tells you something about how popular he is, how much appeal he has, how much people are invested in him as a personality and a player. Nike made him their first ever college football nil athlete before he even got to the pros. Think about how big a deal that is. Nike, one of the biggest apparel companies in the world, looked at all of college football and decided that Shedeur was the one guy they wanted to partner with for nil before he was even in the NFL. That's not random. That's not a small endorsement deal. That's a major company betting on someone becoming a significant cultural figure. So Shedeur is operating in this reality where he's got massive financial success off the field. He's got endorsement deals. He's got jersey sales. He's got licensing money flowing in. He's got influence and appeal that goes way beyond his actual performance on the football field. He's become a cultural figure in a way that most rookies never do. Most guys take years to build that kind of platform. Most guys have to prove themselves on the field first, build a following, and then parlay that into off-field opportunities. But Shedeur had that appeal before he'd even taken a snap in the NFL. And here's the fascinating part. Here's what makes that clip with Jacob so significant. None of that shows up. When you watch Shedeur sitting at that broadcast desk talking to Jacob, when you hear the conversation they have, there's no mention of contracts. There's no mention of endorsement deals. There's no mention of how much money he's made or how many jerseys he's sold. There's no mention of his popularity or his cultural appeal or any of the noise that usually follows someone with his level of off-field success. It's just him and Jacob talking about philosophy. It's just them having a conversation about not letting small battles define you, about appreciating life on a different level, about doing your best instead of obsessing over winning and losing. None of the noise makes it into the conversation. None of the distractions that would come with being a guy who's financially successful and commercially popular before he's proven himself on the field. None of that pollution makes it into this moment. And that might seem like a small thing, but it's actually huge, because it tells you that Shedeur is compartmentalizing. It tells you that he's able to have these separate parts of his life and keep them separate. The off-field success, the endorsements, the popularity, the money, all of that is one thing. But when he's talking to Jacob, when he's having a conversation about things that matter, he's not bringing any of that into it. He's just being himself. That's a skill that a lot of people never develop. A lot of people, when they achieve success off the field, when they become popular, when they start making money and getting attention, they can't help but let that inform how they interact with people. They can't separate who they've become in the public eye from who they are in private moments. But Shedeur seems to be able to do that. He seems to be able to acknowledge that all of that stuff exists, but also to step away from it when he's having a genuine conversation with someone. That's also why this clip is spreading the way it is. People are watching this, and they're seeing a guy who's incredibly successful off the field, who's built this unusual commercial profile as a rookie, but who's still capable of sitting down with a kid and having a real conversation about things that matter. That's rare. That's the kind of thing that makes people respect someone, because it proves that the success hasn't changed them. It proves that despite everything that's happened, despite all the money and the endorsements and the jersey sales, he's still capable of being genuine with people. So now we get to the real question, the one that people have been debating since this clip started spreading. Was that moment with Jacob a genuine expression of who Shedeur Sanders is, or was it a calculated move to build his brand and his image? Was he being authentic, or was he performing? Because here's the thing. In the age of social media, in the age where every interaction can be recorded and shared and analyzed, you have to consider the possibility that moments like this could be strategic. You have to consider that someone could choose to be present with a fan, could engage in a genuine-seeming conversation, could say the right things, all with the understanding that it might get recorded and shared and reflected positively on them. You have to consider that even authenticity can be a calculated move if you're skilled enough at it. So the question becomes, is this who Shedeur actually is, or is this who he's presenting himself as being? Is this him being himself, or is this him being aware of the cameras and the potential for this moment to spread, and then choosing his words and his actions accordingly? Those are fair questions to ask. Those are questions that any reasonable person would consider. But here's what's interesting when you actually look at the evidence. When you look at what Shedeur said in that tent, when you look at the specific things he talked about, when you look at the way he engaged with Jacob, the indicators point toward this being genuine rather than calculated. And the reason is the specificity and the naturalness of how he expressed things. The barber competition reference, for instance, that's not something you throw into a conversation if you're trying to perform. That's not something you would think of if you were calculating how you wanted this interaction to go. It's too random. It's too specific. It's the kind of detail that only comes up when someone is actually being themselves, actually thinking about what they're saying, actually pulling from real memories because something the other person said resonates with something they've actually experienced. The philosophy about not getting consumed by small battles, about appreciating life on a different level, about things not mattering as much as we think they do while we're in them, that's not the kind of thing an athlete would say in a calculated moment. That's not the kind of line that someone would carefully choose if they were trying to build their brand. That's the kind of thing someone says when they're actually thinking about how they see the world and they're expressing that thinking in a genuine way. And the comfortability focus. The fact that he identified that as the key thing he's chasing instead of talking about winning the job or proving something, that's not a calculated brand move. That's someone being honest about what they actually care about, what they're actually focused on, what they actually think is going to matter. A calculated version would probably sound different. A calculated version might include more about proving doubters wrong, or about winning the competition, or about taking the league by storm. But instead, he focused on something more internal, more fundamental, more honestly about the actual process of getting better. The conversation doesn't have the markers of someone who's performing. It doesn't have the polish. It doesn't have the calculated language. It has the opposite. It has rough edges. It has specific memories. It has genuine philosophical thinking. It has the markers of someone who's actually present in the moment and actually thinking about what they're saying. And here's another piece of evidence: the fact that he didn't mention any of the off-field success. The fact that despite being one of the most successful athletes off the field as a rookie, despite the jersey sales and the licensing deals and the Nike partnerships, he didn't bring any of that up. He didn't use this moment to reinforce any of that. He just left it out. That's not what someone does if they're calculating their brand strategy. If you're aware of the cameras, if you're thinking about how this is going to spread, you might naturally weave some of that in. You might mention how grateful you are for the support, or how cool it is that people are buying your jersey, or something that reminds people of your commercial appeal. But he didn't do that. He just talked about philosophy and football and how he thinks about things. He kept it pure. He kept it focused on the actual conversation with Jacob instead of on himself or his image. That's a choice that points toward authenticity. So here's the answer to the question. Based on everything he said in that tent, based on the specific details he included, based on what he chose to focus on and what he chose to leave out, based on the naturalness of his language and the way he engaged with Jacob, it sure looks like this is who Shedeur Sanders actually is. It sure looks like when the cameras are rolling and nobody's scripting a single word. This is the version of himself he puts out into the world. He's someone who thinks about things on a deeper level than the typical athlete. He's someone who can compartmentalize the noise and the success and the pressure, and just focus on what actually matters in the moment he's in. He's someone who's wise enough to understand that small battles don't define the grand scheme of things, even when he's in the middle of one of the biggest competitive moments of his career. He's someone who can make time for a fan and engage with that person, genuinely instead of transactionally. And that's exactly why this moment is spreading the way it is. Because people are watching this and they're seeing evidence of actual character. They're not seeing performance. They're not seeing brand calculation. They're seeing a person who seems to understand what matters and who acts accordingly. And in a league and a world where that kind of authenticity is increasingly rare, that's the kind of thing that resonates with people. At the end of the day, this isn't a complicated story. A kid named Jacob was invited to sit at a broadcast desk during training camp. The host surprised him with Shedeur Sanders. And instead of a quick hello and a photo opportunity, Shedeur actually sat down, put on the headset, and had a real conversation. He talked about philosophy. He talked about not letting small battles define you. He talked about appreciating life on a different level. He talked about comfortability heading into the season. He related to Jacob's perspective about everyone just doing their best instead of focusing on winners and losers. He pulled from his own experience to illustrate that he genuinely understood that way of thinking. He didn't perform humility. He didn't recite something he'd been taught in media training. He just was himself. And that's exactly why this 2-minute clip is spreading faster than most of his actual football plays. Because people aren't just watching a quarterback anymore. They're watching someone who seems to understand what actually matters. Someone who can compartmentalize the noise and the success and the pressure and still be present with a stranger's kid. Someone who's wise enough to know that in the grand scheme of things, small battles don't define the story. That's rare. That's the kind of thing that makes people believe in someone. So here's the real question for you. After watching this moment unfold, are you more impressed by what Shedeur's shown on the field or by who he's shown himself to be in moments like this? Drop your take in the comments because that answer tells you everything about what you value in athletes.